like yourselves drive others in a similar direction to you. So in the workforce, you always need to get to a place. There's a challenge, and these factors are very much relevant in communities that we research in, but may help you in your workplace. There's a bunch of actors and drivers, and some of the drivers I'll discuss. It's a short presentation. Our norms and ambient cues, and of course the need for effective communication with people. So basically, for the record, there's a number of projects. One project, as back in the day, I suppose 6-7 years ago, actually 2008 started Energy Neighbourhoods, where we worked with energy neighbourhoods across Europe. So 6,000 households, so you can imagine all these different people in different communities and having to forge their behaviour in a particular direction or support them, enhance it, foster their change. Savings overall in the project were at 10% per household, and 9 gigawatt hours overall of energy was saved in that project. The Commission were very fond of that project, so they gave us a sequel, Energy Neighbourhoods 2, you'll see there, and in that we attracted 9,000 households with 6 gigawatt hours of savings and a similar overall saving of 10%. So lots of learning in there on how to change behaviour and how to move people in the right direction. You can see here some material flow analysis, which is part of our work. We look at the stuff that houses use up. So in a community you may have, say, 200 households. What you use in terms of energy, waste, water, food, and you can see on the left here, one community with 2,000 households. The total consumption of their, in terms of emissions of CO2, was this size. It amounted to 3.7 global hectares, or 3.7 units for the case of this study. But at the finish of the study, after 4 years of behaviour intervention, it reduced to this size, at 2.7 global hectares. So 28% reduction in their use of stuff, energy, waste and food. So a lot of experience built up moving people in this type of direction. And deeper interventions with 21 communities and groups, some of them listed here. You see Bird Hill, Dunmore East, community in Galway, Keelaloo, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of experience. Here's a chart that I'll just show, and this is a short presentation. Questions are at the end again for anybody who's interested, but you can see where behaviour change is in the chart, and it's no accident that it's top right. So you can look at your IRR on this axis, your percent. You can look at your efficiency for emissions reduction in kilograms of CO2 per unit money. And no matter which way you look at this diagram, you can focus as much as you like in life on technology as a fix for energy reduction, but you better not ignore behaviour change. Behaviour change will, per pound, produce a much greater benefit. So you have two people living side by side in the community. From the work I've done, you can see that I have a lot of resource use kind of data for communities. Two people. One household have two children. They're a married couple, and they use 1,500 litres, say 1,600 litres of oil in a year. The house on the right uses 3,000 litres, a gentleman living alone. He uses 3,000 litres in the same fabric and the same structure, the same housing estate. And the couple next door use 1,600, there's 4 of them, that's 400 litres a person. Virtually an 8-fold difference living in the same structure. Completely different behaviours. And that's how important behaviour change here is in the top right hand corner. So you can ignore it at your peril. Basically the research is looking to identify the things that enable behaviour change. It's that simple. Anything that enables behaviour change, we're grabbing it and we're putting it in our research bag. We're then going to bring that bag of drivers to communities, a number of communities across the country, and test them to get a fingerprint in that community or that group of what would drive that group on a transition, on an energy efficiency transition. So if they were going to retrofit, if they were going to insulate their local parish hall and all their homes, what would be the things that would drive them? Very different types of communities we're going to test it. Obviously we want the first communities to get different fingerprints, to give an idea for policy levers. So there's policy intention here. There's basically, at the moment, we have 90 factors identified. So we're getting down to the nub of the research. I don't have the time to go through all 90 factors, but I do have the time to go through one or two for you, and maybe a small bit of fun on the first one. So I'm going to discuss two of these really in shortly. But the various actors, for instance religious groups in communities, have been noted if an energy efficiency campaign in a community or an intervention, if it intervenes at the level where there's strong faith or faith groups, if it leverages a faith group locally, 36%, there can be a 30% increase in energy savings. In Kingston in the UK, there's a massive uplift in an energy efficiency campaign due to focusing on faith groups in a particular community. And these are other ones. The energy champion that Barry mentioned on site is essential. Project managers and all the normal things you think, devolution of power to local authorities, hopefully they can force change or support change or foster it. Schools can be important, non-profit organisations. There's a list of factors or actors that we've drawn down. Some of the drivers that drive behaviour change at a group level, measurement is key. So the BR assessment we talked about earlier, measurement is key. Social capital, local things like faith groups and other social capital where people have relationships forged, like a Tidy Towns committee. In your workforce, if there are groups or interest in a particular area, that can support if it has a synergy with somewhere you want to move on a transition. Participation and ownership needs to be strong. Normative considerations I'll cover in a minute just for a bit of fun. Infrastructure is important, and that's what this is about. Really this session is about information, effective communication, and I suppose commitment, getting a workforce or a community to commit to a specific change. Aside from those, before I go into this kind of just a short fun experiment, there's messaging factors and communication channels. I'm only going to mention them, there are so many. There are many ways to craft the message. There's only one way to do it right. Really, you need to craft your messages right, and that's for your workforce too. It's for every member of the community. You need to move people on a transition with you. It's very much about how they speak and about how they understand, not how you do. So often the engineer's perspective going into a community or workforce is not the best one to communicate. So key factors. On many of the speakers, or Barry would, in terms of site supervision and otherwise, leadership is important. That be collective vision in terms of behaviour change, social capital, as I mentioned, identity norms measurement, distributive justice, that your group or your workforce or your community would be involved in the decision. That you just come along and say, we're going to do this. That you give them an open palette and you say, well, I kind of want to move in this direction. Which ways would you like to move in that direction? And capacity building, training certification, as kind of exemplified by Mark excellently. That Quality Build project is super. So here's an experiment, and please don't be afraid to raise your hand. So I ask you to join 5 other, if you could imagine that I ask you to join 5 other people at a table, just each of you. And we go into a room, you're joining 5 other people at a table, and I ask which line is the same length as X. How many people would say B? Raise your hands, please. Okay, that's nearly everybody. Maybe there's a few shy people. How many people would say A? How many people would say C? So, let's have a look. 99% of people agree that you are right. So if I move on with that test, we do the same again. But this time, one by one, your colleagues in the team in the room, they say first that C, actually, C is the same length as X. So you've got this team of 5 people inside in the room with me. You're going last. You're saying what you think is the same length as X is. You're going last. And the other 4 people, this is the jury effect. It's a cascade effect. The other people in the group all get to say what they think is the same length line, and they all say C. How many people in the room would say B? Please raise your hand. How many of you would stick to B knowing B is correct? So virtually again I have probably nearly everybody with their hands. How many people would move to C? Anybody would move to C? Nobody in this room would move to C if the other 4 people say C. That's interesting. Because in tests, 3/4 of the people in the group tested, 3/4 of the people will change their mind. The chief researcher here said the reasonably intelligent and well-meaning people are willing to call white black is a matter of concern. So this is a normative driver. It's the fact that other people beside you really can change your mind. Those 4 people made up the mind in 3/4. You all predicted that you wouldn't go for C, yet 3/4 of you will in tests. You will change your mind. So that's the power of normative behaviour change. The rash of green and blue and red bins across the country is another example, and a very good example in terms of waste efficiency, but also an example of the power of norms. The neighbours are doing it, it's convenient, we'll do it. So norms are another thing you wouldn't want to drop in terms of behaviour change. And here's one last example, and we'll go to the next speaker after me, who is, can't see it there, the next speaker is Roger Green. So this example shows the difference that ambient cues make, basically smileys, as we all use them on our text messages. I just said I'd include this. In a campaign, in an energy saving campaign where bills are sent out to thousands of households, trying to cause an energy reduction in those households. You can see just below a 1% saving, where I say to you all, sending this bill for instance, in this, that you know, your neighbour saves this much energy in numbers. 1% saving. Using analog, similar. The control experiment, you can see it, but the ambient cues, the little smiley face on a bill, as in terms of feedback, where you have reduced your energy use. Your neighbour's doing better, now you're doing really well. It produces a saving greater than that, significantly greater than that. There's a lot of work in Bath University going on along these lines. There are simple ways to change behaviour. It's far from rocket science. For people in groups, for people in communities, for people in the workplace. And we need to bring people on this transition with us. And we have 90 factors already identified. It's kind of complex to go through all. I couldn't do it in 15 minutes. It's layered, it's nuanced. The research website is here, and I hope the presentations are put up for people. If anybody wants to get back to me, I'm Vincent Carragher, and you just put a dot in that and go at tcd.ie.